Chapter 4. Try 10-28-66, Chip whispered. Why? Jonah asked. That's Dad's birthday, Chip said. He's so conceited and stupid, he'd use his own birthday as the code. It's been 2 days since Jonah and Chip had each gotten their "You are one of the missing" letters, and Chip was acting crazier than ever. Today, coming home on the school bus, Chip had gotten obsessed with the idea that he had to see his birth certificate, that it would tell him everything he needed to know. So now the two boys were crouched beside a wall safe in Chip's basement. Jonah paused with his fingers poised over the digital keypad. Really? He said. Even your birth certificate's in here? It's not going to help. Like I told you, like it said on the internet, when a kid's adopted, they issue a new certificate and lock all the old papers away. Your original birth certificate's not going to be in here unless it was an open adoption, and somehow, I don't think if your parents won't even talk about you being adopted. Just try the code, Chip insisted, my hand's shaking too bad. Jonah glanced over at his friend, who did indeed look shaky. Even in the dim light of the basement, Jonah could tell that Chip had a panicky sheen of sweat on his face. Chip's curly hair was smashed down because he kept clutching his head like he had to work hard to hold himself together. He seemed about one step away from being one of those loony types who mumbled to themselves on the street downtown. Jonah sighed and began punching in the numbers 102866. Nothing happened. When's your birthday? Jonah asked. Mine? Chip said. September 19th. And you're 13? Yeah, why? Jonah didn't answer. He just began punching in a new combination. 0919. The safe beeped. Then there was an audible click. The safe door spring opened just a crack. Bingo, Jonah said. He kind of wished his own mom or dad were there just then because they would be able to tell Chip, see, your parents must care about you some if they use your birthday as the code to their safe. But Jonah couldn't say anything that goopy himself. Go ahead and open it, Chip said. I can't look. He had his shaking hand over his eyes, but he kept lifting it to peek out. Jonah gripped the door to the partly open safe. Are you sure you want me to do this? He asked. This is like breaking and entering or something. Chip scowled at him. You're in my house, he said. I asked you to open the safe. But your parents, what they want doesn't count, Chip said harshly. There was some saying Jonah's mom always quoted, usually to Catherine, about how eavesdroppers never heard anything good about themselves. Jonah wondered if that also applied to boys opening locked safes and looking at secret papers. But that was something else he could say to Chip. He jerked on the door, swinging it completely open, and reached in to take out the first few sheets of paper on the top of the stack. This is just stuff about buying your house, Jonah said, leafing quickly through the papers. Real estate, settlements, title insurance. Chip moved his hand away from his eyes and squinted at the papers. Maybe that's connected too, he said slowly. My dad says they got a really sweet deal for this house. Maybe I was supposed to meet you so that I'd find out what about being adopted. Jonah carefully put the house papers in a stack on the floor. About 4 out of every 100 Americans are adopted, Jonah said. I think you could have met someone who was adopted in any neighborhood you might have moved to. Now you're sounding really crazy, like those conspiracy theorists who think the moon landing never happened, or that the government has a bunch of aliens locked up on some military base in New Mexico. But they do, Chip said. Those aliens are real. You really believe that? Chip slugged him in the arm. No, fooled you. Jonah was glad that Chip could still show some sense of humor, that he hadn't totally crossed the line into insanity. Jonah reached into the safe again and pulled out more papers. He was careful to keep them in order as he sorted through them. 3/4 of the way down in the stack, he let out a low whistle. Here it is. He held up a document labeled Birth Certificate, Cook County, Illinois. Chip eventually forgot that he was too stressed out to look. He crowded against Jonah's shoulder. Charles Haddingford Winston III, huh? Jonah teased. Chip grimaced. Crazy, isn't it? He said bitterly. I'm Charles Winston III, and I'm not even related. They just had to have some kid to stick that name on. Chip, you are related, or as good as related. They've raised you, Jonah said. Not very well, Chip said. Jonah took one look at Chip's face and decided not to argue. He rifled through the rest of the papers. Beside him, Chip groaned. Happy Family Adoption Agency, Chip muttered. You have got to be kidding. Something slipped out of the stack of papers Jonah was holding against one knee, while he braced his other knee against the floor, trying to catch the one sliding paper. Jonah lost his balance and fell over sideways. The whole stack cascaded down the carpet, skidding toward the wall. Sorry, Jonah said. If things are out of order, your dad's going to be able to tell. I don't care, Chip said acidly. Jonah frowned and began gathering up the papers. He thought he'd gotten everything until he saw a scrap of yellow sticking out from under a chair a few feet away. That's what started this whole mess, he muttered. He reached under the chair and pulled out a yellow post-it note. It said James Reardon, 513-555-0192. He held the note up so Chip could see it too. Was this with the adoption papers or the house stuff? Jonah asked. Chip narrowed his eyes. I know how to find out, he said. He took the post-it note from Jonah's hand and walked over to the other side of the basement, where couches and chairs clustered around a huge entertainment center. He reached into the cabinet of the entertainment center and pulled out a cordless phone. Here, I'll put it on speakerphone so you can hear too, Chip said. Chip, I don't think... Jonah stopped because he couldn't explain why this suddenly seemed like such a bad idea to him. Chip was already punching in numbers, each digital beep adding to Jonah's sense of apprehension. Jonah rushed over to Chip's side, as if being able to see the phone as well as hear it would make everything easier. The phone clicked, making the connection, and then smoothly flowing into ringing. It rang once, twice, another click. Then a gruff voice boomed out in the phone. Federal Bureau of Investigations, Reardon speaking. Jonah stabbed his finger at the button to break the connection.